So I was able to fill out another whiteboard full of questions, so this will be Q&A video number 6. First question comes from SpeedyMechnic. He said, can you talk about progressive overload in detail? Now that's a pretty broad request. I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for there. However, I wouldn't have written it onto the board if I didn't want to at least try to provide some feedback. So the first thing is, progress is the name of the game. If you're not training to progress towards something, then you're wasting your fucking time. But the way you would quantify progress, and therefore should influence the way you do what you do to promote the response that you're there to get, will vary based on why you're doing what you do. So if you train to get stronger, you quantify progression by how much weight you're lifting. But if you train to build muscle, burn fat, improve your level of physical preparedness for sport, then it's not about the weight all the time. If you're training to build muscle and burn fat, you quantify progression based on what the measuring tape and what body fat readings are telling you. If you're training to improve your level of physical preparedness for sport, there are tests related to every sport that you can do to see where you rank amongst other competitors. And if you've undergone a baseline evaluation, that's how you would quantify progress. How far have you come since then? Is what you're doing working or not? So when people talk about progressive overload, they're generally talking about adding more weight to the bar. But unless you're training to get stronger, it's not about that. So I'll give you an example of progressive overload for someone that wants to build muscle. It's about subjecting the muscle to the highest levels of tension possible. So in week 1, do whatever the fuck you want. But in week 2, do the exact same thing, only slower. Keep the muscles under tension for longer. In week 3, do the exact same thing, but rest less between sets. Do more work per unit of time. Those are examples right there of how you can increase the demand on the muscle without actually increasing the weight. So progressive overload is relative to what you're training for. So hopefully that helps you. Now, next question came from Jayzer. He was saying, how would you modify a lateral raise for someone that has a shoulder impingement? And my question in response to that would be, why do you have to do a lateral raise? If you have a shoulder impingement as is, wouldn't you want to remove things from your strategy that are going to further promote that? Anytime you internally rotate your arm, raise it to the front, raise it to the side, you're decreasing the subacromial space. So you're promoting impingement. This doesn't guarantee impingement, it's just promoting it. Now, my question to you is, are you training to get results today or tomorrow or yesterday even? Or are you going to do this for the rest of your life? Because I would argue that longevity is more important than including something into your strategy that could negatively affect the health of your shoulders. However, if you insist on including something into your strategy to train the side deltoid, you could still do a lateral raise, just modify the way you do it. Instead of doing reps under a traditional manner, just do isometrics. Hold the top position of a lateral raise for as long as fucking possible. So an example would be, hold the top position for 60 seconds if you can. When you get to 60, rest for 10, hold it for another 40. When you get to 40, rest for 10, hold it for another 20. That's 2 minutes time under tension and 2 minutes and 20 seconds of real time. You can still promote the development of that muscle through metabolic stress, and you don't need a lot of weight. Now, you sent me a link to an Athlean X video in which he was talking about how to modify it to limit the risk of impingement. So he's saying lean in and externally rotate. You could do that. I'm going to say that that's not the worst advice that I've seen him give. It's not that bad. Basically, what you want to do, take a look at where a muscle starts, where a muscle finishes, based on the orientation of the muscle. That's the direction of effort it is going to be most responsible for. You want to oppose the direction of effort with resistance. So the way he suggested does that. It only took him like 7 or 8 minutes to actually explain that. So you could do that, or you could say, you know what, fuck it. It's not about the weight to me. I want to promote growth through metabolic stress, and in that case, you can use isometrics like I suggested. So hopefully that helps you. Now, the next 3 questions come from Hesham. Hesham has contacted me personally. I believe he's a 16-year-old in the Middle East, and he's just getting into working out. Now, Hesham, I want to limit the questions that I answer, and this goes for everybody, to ones in which the answers that I give can be practically applied immediately to help you get better results from your very next workout. Some of the stuff you're asking me, the answers to would not affect the way you do anything, so I'm not going to answer those questions. Other questions are just too broad and just too vague. So I'll give you an example of questions that he's asked. How to optimally lose weight for someone that's obese. Someone that's obese, this is a reflection of their decisions, not their conditions. So genetics could play a part, but there are other decisions that have been made that have promoted that response. So there's a lot of other things that need to be addressed besides training. So someone who's obese is generally dealing with hormonal imbalances that need to be addressed through diet, nutrition, supplementation, and I'm not the best person to ask in regards to that. as it relates to training, I have no idea what this person can or cannot do, if they have any pre-existing injuries, anything like that that needs to be taken into consideration. I have no idea what they're doing already. So it's very, very difficult for me to make a recommendation in terms of how to optimally lose weight for someone that's obese, because you have to understand it's the decisions they've made and the person that they are that created that the most. So there's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration, and I'm sorry if that sounds harsh. The next question: how exactly muscle is built? Now, the answer to that will not change the way you or anybody does anything that they do. So for that reason, I'm not just going to present information for the sake of presenting information. I want to present information that can be practically applied to get the best results from your very next workout. So I'm not going to answer that. The last one here, it kind of cracked me up because this is a question that I would have asked myself. You said, can you outline the exact steps to go from zero muscle to getting jacked out of your fucking mind? Now, I wish I could, but I can't. What you're basically asking me is, how do you go from being broke as a joke to rich as a bitch? There's a lot of different ways to do it. But what I try to do is teach the underlying, fundamental, foundational principles that should guide and influence the decision-making process so you can make the best decision for yourself and make the appropriate course correction as you go. There is no, formula to go from zero muscle to jacked out of your mind. Your body's going to respond to what you do based on the focus, intensity, concentration, and effort that goes into the work that you're doing. And it's going to get desensitized to certain things. So you have to make the appropriate course correction as you go. If there was a formula for this, you would have found it already. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it does not exist. What I'm going to continue to try to do is to provide an understanding of the underlying, fundamental, foundational principles that should guide and influence the decision-making process so you can make the best decision for yourself. So hopefully that answers your questions. If you like the information, share it. Click the fucking button at the bottom. Subscribe to the channel. I will keep bringing you the best information you're going to find as it relates to trying to build muscle, get stronger, lose fat, look better, perform better, all that fucking shit.